In the unforgiving heart of the Arizona desert, where the sun burns unforgivingly and the wind carries secrets older than time itself, there was a town named Dustpine. Dustpine was a place forgotten by the law, ruled by fear, and stitched together by the threads of corruption and greed. At the top of this rotten pyramid was Nathan Barlow, landowner, tyrant, king of the dust and ash. He didn't just own land. He owned men's futures. He owned their silence. He owned the crooked courts, the bought judges, and the cowardly lawmen. And on the edge of this dark kingdom lived Abigail Carter and her husband, Thomas. They had a modest ranch, cracked earth beneath their feet, sweat in their brows, and hope burning quietly in their hearts. Abigail was a woman shaped by hardship, a woman who rose every morning before dawn, her hands weathered but steady, her eyes filled with a stubborn flame that refused to be snuffed out. She loved her husband Thomas fiercely, and together they dreamed of a future where their land would be theirs, not taken, not stolen, but earned. But in Dustpine, dreams were a dangerous thing. Their nightmare began with a letter, a legal claim filed by Barlow's men, accusing the Carters of trespassing, building a fence where none should stand. It was a lie. But in Dustpine, lies were currency. Thomas fought back with every fiber of his being. He took the case to court, confident that the law would protect them. But the law was blind, or worse, it was bought. The judge, Jeremiah Carmichael, was a man whose ears were filled with gold coins, not truth. In a courtroom where dust and deceit mingled, the verdict was handed down swiftly. The Carters lost half their land, but Nathan Barlow wanted more than land. He wanted submission. He wanted Abigail and Thomas to kneel before him, not just with words, but with broken spirits. The fires started soon after. One night, the Carter barn was engulfed in flames. 2 horses perished in the inferno. Sheriff Eli Ward called it an accident lightning strike, but the sky had been clear. Then came the beating. Thomas, returning from town, was struck from behind with a rifle, but no robbery, no theft, just a brutal message: submit or die. The final blow came on a cold, cruel Sunday. Thomas never returned from the road. His body was found in the ravine near Poe. Hollow Bridge, 3 bullets torn through his back. No suspects, no arrests, no justice. Abigail buried him herself. The church denied him a proper Christian burial. Their prayers, bought and sold by Barlow's influence, she pleaded with the sheriff. With the judge, even with Barlow himself. All she wanted was peace, a moment to grieve, a chance to keep what little remained. Barlow gave her 7 days to leave his land. 7 days. And after that, not even her husband's grave would be safe. On the 6th night, Abigail sat alone beside a dying fire, clutching Thomas's worn hat and the old Colt Navy pistol he brought home from the war. In the flickering light, something inside her shattered. A quiet, deadly resolve took root. At dawn, she vanished. No one knew where she went. Some whispered she fled to New Mexico. Others believed madness had claimed her. But Dustpine never forgot, because the West has a way of keeping score. 3 years later, a stranger rode into Dustpine, dressed in black, face hidden by a red kerchief. Riding a black stallion, with eyes like fire. Her name was Cassidy Quinn. She said she was just passing through, but her eyes said otherwise. She had come to finish what had been started, because when justice fails, bullet decides. 3 long years had passed, but in Dustpine, time didn't heal. It buried. It buried truths, buried witnesses, buried memories alongside unmarked graves. The name Abigail Carter had vanished from church pews, from saloon gossip. From city records. As far as the town was concerned, she'd been swallowed by the desert. Just another widow broken by the weight of the West. And then Cassidy Quinn arrived. She came on horseback, riding a coal-black stallion called Rook, whose hooves struck the ground like warning shots. Her coat was worn but sturdy, her belt loaded with bullets polished to a shine, Her pistols, twin peacemakers, sat holstered at each hip, untouched but always ready. Cassidy didn't talk about the past, didn't smile, didn't ask questions. She already knew the answers. To Dot, she rented a room above Dustpine's saloon, a place thick with whiskey stench, cigar smoke, and the echo of false laughter. The girls there worked for Nathan Barlow. So did the bartender. So did the piano. Cassidy sat silent night after night. In a corner booth where no light reached her eyes, she watched. She listened. She learned. It didn't take long for her to reacquaint herself with the town's decay. Nathan Barlow had grown bolder, now buying up land all the way to Dry River's edge. Sheriff Eli Ward still wore the badge he didn't earn. Drinking himself blind by noon. Judge Carmichael, nearly blind, still stamped every paper Barlow handed him. No questions asked. And then there was Frank Doyle, Barlow's new head of security. An ex-mercenary with a love for cruelty and a knack for vanishing bodies. Cassidy made no move. Not yet. Vengeance is a fire. Yes, but it burns brighter when you control the flame. On her second night, she followed Doyle. He slinked out the back of the saloon, drunk and laughing, dragging a girl named Lena behind him. She was young. Too young, terrified. Cassidy didn't interrupt. She watched. She waited. When he was done threatening the girl and started staggering back toward the alley. Cassidy stepped from the shadows. She said nothing, just smashed the butt of her revolver into his nose, breaking it with a sickening crunch. Then she disappeared into the darkness before he could even scream. The next morning, Frank Doyle woke in the dirt, nose shattered, face bloodied, eyes wild. He didn't remember much, only that someone had made him feel small. He claimed it was a robbery. Nobody believed him, but nobody dared laugh either. Cassidy smiled. For the first time in years, whispers began. Who was the woman in black? Where had she come from? Why was she always armed? Barlow heard about her by the end of the third day. He sent word, an invitation to discuss business. Cassidy declined with a note scribbled in plain black ink. I'm not for sale. Barlow didn't take rejection kindly. He was a man, used to owning people, bodies, homes, lawmen. Being ignored was something new. Being challenged? That was unacceptable. On the fourth night, Cassidy noticed two men trailing her. They kept their distance, but not enough. She led them away from the main road, through the path behind the old church, and into a dead end alley near the grain depot. They drew first, but Cassidy didn't hesitate. One shot to the thigh. Another to the shoulder. Non-lethal. Deliberate. She knelt beside the one still conscious. Tell your boss, she whispered. I haven't even started. By morning, the town doctor was tending to two bleeding men, and the sheriff was asking questions he didn't want answers to. Cassidy returned to her room, wiped the blood from her boots, and opened a wooden box hidden beneath the floorboards. Inside were 6 silver bullets, each engraved by hand with a single name. Eward J. Carmichael F. Doyle's, Caldwell B. McClintock, and Barlow 6. Names. 6 deaths. Cassidy wasn't a savior. She wasn't a hero. She was a reckoning. And she had time, because when justice fails, the bullet decides. The morning sun rose over Dustpine like a slow, burning promise, an omen of reckoning yet to come. The sky itself seemed heavy with the weight of unspoken sins. Cassidy Quinn moved through the town like a shadow that even the light feared to touch. She was patient, coldly patient, the kind of patience born in the depths of pain and sharpened by years of loss. She watched the men on her list. Sheriff Eli Ward was a drunk, hiding behind a faded badge. His nights lost to whiskey and shame. Judge Jeremiah Carmichael, bent with age and nearly blind, remained a puppet in Barlow's hands. Frank Doyle roamed the streets, his face a mask of fury and humiliation, vowing to hunt the woman who broke him, but Cassidy's eyes were fixed elsewhere. It was Sunday. The church was filled to bursting, the wooden walls echoing with the Reverend Samuel Caldwell's booming voice. "Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth." Cassidy slipped silently through the back door, her boots barely making a sound on the worn floorboards. She moved among the pews, her presence unnoticed but charged with deadly intent. When Caldwell turned to face his congregation, his gaze met Cassidy's. Recognition flashed in his eyes, quickly replaced by terror. "Abigail?" he whispered, disbelief trembling in his voice. His breath caught as the shot rang out. The single gunshot shattered the quiet reverence of the chapel like thunder in a canyon. Blood sprayed the wooden cross behind the altar. The Bible fell open, its pages fluttering wildly in the sudden breeze. Cassidy did not flee. She walked calmly toward the exit, past the stunned parishioners who stared in shock and horror. No screams, only silence and the cold, creeping fear that justice had arrived. Panic gripped Dustpine like a choking fog. Sheriff Ward bolted his office doors tight. Judge Carmichael shuttered the courthouse for safety. Nathan Barlow, the ruthless kingpin, did not pray that night, but he clutched 2 loaded guns beneath his bed. His eyes haunted. Cassidy was no longer a rumor or a ghost. She was a threat, wanted and hunted. The very next night, Doyle set out with 2 men, rifles in hand, stalking the northern thickets. Only one returned. He came back mute and trembling, hands stained with blood, not his own, but Doyle's. Cassidy washed the blood from her hands and crossed 2 names off her list. S. Caldwell Doyle 4 remained. She knew where to find each one. The morning sun rose over Dustpine again, but this time with a message plastered on every door, post, and saloon wall. 6 silver bullets drawn by hand. Beneath them, a chilling note: "When justice fails, the bullet decides." The wind swept through Dustpine's empty streets with a mournful howl sound that seemed to carry the ghosts of every soul lost to injustice in this unforgiving land. Dustpine had grown silent, but beneath that silence lay a storm, brewing and waiting for its moment. Cassidy Quinn, cloaked in black and wrapped in the cold armor of years spent chasing vengeance, rode slowly toward the heart of the town. Her black stallion's hooves clattered against cracked wood and dusty stones, sounding a slow, relentless drumbeat of reckoning. She was no stranger to this place, but tonight every shadow held a secret, every corner whispered a warning. She had crossed deserts, faced death, and outlived lies to arrive at this final chapter. Her first stop was the courthouse, the place where justice had been sold for gold, where the law was twisted and broken like a brutal branch underfoot. Inside, Judge Jeremiah Carmichael sat alone, bent and broken, his face a mask of guilt and despair. Cassidy's footsteps echoed coldly on the wooden floor as she approached. Her eyes locked on the trembling man. She placed a faded yellow letter on his desk, a transcript of the trial that had stolen her family's future, that had condemned her husband to death and her to exile. The judge's voice cracked with a shame and fear. Why do you haunt me so?" Cassidy's gaze bore into him like a sharpened blade. "Because you turned your back on the law. Because your silence was a bullet that killed a man and shattered a woman's world." She turned to leave, but not before delivering a final warning. Voice cold and unforgiving. "Cross me again with your false verdicts, and I won't be so merciful next time." Carmichael's world crumbled. He vanished into the dust, a ghost fleeing the reckoning. Cassidy's next target was Sheriff Eli Ward, the coward who had sworn to protect Dustpine but instead sold his honor for whiskey and silence. She found him passed out in the stables, reeking of alcohol and regret. Without mercy, she dragged him to the town square, still cloaked in pre-dawn shadows, tied to a chair, exposed and vulnerable. The sheriff faced the consequence of his cowardice as the first pale light crept over the horizon. Curious faces peered from windows and doorways, drawn to the brutal truth unfolding before them. Cassidy's voice cut through the silence. Like a knife, you wore a badge and swore an oath to protect this town. But when blood was spilled, you closed your eyes and ears. She handed the trembling sheriff a pistol. Try to prove you're not a coward. His hands shook violently. His soul was frozen in fear. A single gunshot shattered the fragile morning calm. Eli. Ward's reign ended not with a bang, but with the silence of a man who could not face justice. Now only one name remained. Nathan. Barlow, the man who ruled Dustpine with an iron fist, whose greed had poisoned every corner of the town. Cassidy approached his mansion at dusk, the fading light casting long shadows on the cracked stone walls. She wrote openly. No attempt to hide her presence. Barlow was waiting, flanked by two burly men armed to the teeth. A cruel smile twisted his lips. Abigail Carter. Or should I say the ghost? Who haunts Dustpine? He sneered. I thought you died in that desert. Cassidy's voice was steady, cold like winter's bite. You thought wrong. The air thickened, charged with a deadly promise. The guards fired. First 2 shots rang out. 2 men dropped like stones. Barlow dove behind an ornate desk, desperate for his shotgun, but Cassidy was faster. Her revolver was steady as she leveled it at his forehead. Her voice was quiet but fierce. You destroyed my life. You killed the man I loved. You stole my land. You crushed my dignity. Barlow babbled excuses, pleas for mercy, but Cassidy was deaf to lies. She spun the cylinder of her revolver, slid the last silver bullet into the chamber, looked him straight in the eyes. Now you know what it means to wait for justice. And, Toady, have none come. The shot cracked like thunder. Cold. Final. Barlow's reign ended in silence and dust. Cassidy rode through the streets. One last time. The town was quiet. No cheers. No tears. Only the wind. She stopped at the old Carter homestead, disembarked from her horse, walked slowly to the grave. Now weathered and worn, she knelt and carefully buried the wooden box, each name crossed off with finality. She placed Thomas's old hat on the sun-bleached cross. Tears pricked at her eyes, but she did not weep. It's over, Thomas. They've paid. Cassidy Quinn was never seen in Dustpine again. Some say she rode north, chasing ghosts as relentless as her own. Others say she laid down her guns forever, seeking a peace the West never promised. But those who lived through that time know this. She was not just a woman hungry for revenge. She was the embodiment of justice, when all else had failed. A living testament that in the wild, unforgiving West, when the law turns its back, the bullet decides.